We are live. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Another Way podcast, where I interview artists who I believe are pursuing their artistic careers another way, which also the name of my book. And you will find out what that means as we hear more from David. And I'm so excited to have David as a guest today because he is somebody who's been pursuing very much another way. So we're going to hear all about that in a second. So David Quang Pham. We met through the True community, thanks to Bob Ost, actually, who suggested we meet. And I have to say he was spot on, right? Because I think we both had a lot in common. And it's been really, now that was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so it's been a while. And I have to say that I've seen you, I think you've really kind of grown and evolved a lot since then. Yeah. So let me tell everyone at home a little bit about David before he starts sharing all of his magical wisdom with you. So David is a musical theater science communicator, dramaturg, and songwriter. And I would say he's a musical theater disruptor because he has come into musical theater and just disrupted what we think of when we think of it. And so your musical Ellipses has now received 5 readings, which is phenomenal. And you also have another musical tour, which was a finalist for the Downtown Urban Arts Festival. And just a little bit about your background here. You grew up in an Asian American first generation household, which is really exciting. So you are the second generation having grown up in America. And you were always drawn to astronomy and physics when you were younger. And you now have your degree in astrophysics, which I think is so cool. It's so different than a lot of musical theater writers. You don't hear that a lot in theater. Physics and theater don't always go together. And then you just got involved in musical theater. So I would love to hear from you as you give us your own little introduction, a little bit about what it was like growing up and how you transitioned from science into theater.
Yeah, I will add disruptor. Like, yes, I mean upfront, I am a disruptor.
Yeah.
Because when I went in, I didn't know any rules, so I broke every rule in musical theater.
Yeah.
So, but now it's more on purpose because with all this accessible virtual theater, yes, I'm like picking up on things that I never have access to as a kid of immigrants, like, and we didn't have much. Growing up, yeah, my parents usually watch things like Kanku operas or kabuki theater, so a lot of my music is based on the Platonic scale. And yeah, oftentimes my mission is to connect the Eastern and Western art form. I did not like the form when I was younger, just because we never liked anything our parents liked. But I had learned to appreciate it once I went to college and just was like, oh, I'm very unique. I had a different walk of life. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pinpoint the most important things about my childhood that made me who I am today. And yeah, like my space camp was um, full of visits to operas.
Now, were these operas Vietnamese operas, specifically Vietnamese, because you were Vietnamese, or what kind of opera?
They're usually Eastern operas. So, example is Turandot, which was written by an Italian, but it was based in China.
Okay.
That was one of my first operas. I went and saw it after going to space camp, and it was I think it was in Kentucky that I went and saw it. And yeah, that I was 7 years old then, 6 or 7 years old then, and I mean that influenced me to take on theater, and I decided to act in second grade for the local theater Christmas Carol. Yeah, this is a really interesting route that made me who I am actually, and it was made me a musical theater writer specifically.
Right. But
So
you still went into for schooling. You still chose a degree in science.
yeah. I can start from teachers basically. So it's always the teachers that's very important to you as a child that like makes you a certain occupation that you'll have in the future. Certainly, like why didn't I go into musical theater? immediately when after graduating high school, right? Why did I decide to go to science? So I was in Science Olympiad. I've won awards for astronomy, but I also was very musically literate. Going to high school, I was the youngest student in my calculus class, and I tested out 2 years worth of math. And the summer before, I went to a music theory camp. I was writing lyrics around the song around my junior year of high school. That same year, I decided to perform in musicals again after taking like a hiatus and basically being a crew member and orchestra member throughout high school. In the calculus class for a winter project, we had to teach integration. And I decided for this project, I'd write my first ever musical called Mathland.
Mathland, I love it.
Yeah, it's a land that's that my teacher always referred to on like tests and prompts. He always goes and escapes in this land called Mathland, and my adaptation was actually a horror musical.
Cool.
Where the constants couldn't go upstage or downstage, and people had to maneuver in a one-dimensional plane.
Okay.
And that was very interesting. And when I like received the rubric for grade, fortunately an A. Yeah, he wrote, "You should consider being a musical writer."
Oh.
And
Okay.
so yeah, like that's a different. That's usually yeah, like again, like a teacher is always the one that pushes you to a certain occupation and encourages you. I didn't think it'd be a math teacher. Like out of like you would think like a theater drama teacher, but it was a math teacher that really pushed me in that direction. What really kind of stopped me though from actually going that direction and choosing that career immediately after high school was actually my English teacher. So that's the semester after, like I decided to do the same thing and musicalize a project. In the AP English, we had to do a art project for Grapes of Wrath after we read it.
Okay.
So I decided to do an adaptation of that. What had happened is he actually gave me a failing grade because I went beyond what he asked. And
wow, interesting.
he wouldn't allow me to present. And so I literally like was in front of class with nothing. And it kind of broke me. And honestly, I just thought I decided not to be a musical writer from there. And then yeah, it was teachers that like pushed me and stopped me. Like that's why they're important. Like they can make you or break you.
Yeah, well, and also what's interesting to me, just from a development point of view, is that it's the art. It's like the art sides that were kind of pulling you back, and the science side was the one encouraging you, which is actually kind of an interesting metaphor, I think, at least for science, anyways. Right, that kind of makes sense. But when you were super young, was there a disconnect between your two passions? Like, were you conscious of the fact that people don't usually put science and the arts together? Or was that experience with your English teacher the first time that really became apparent?
That was the first time. My science teachers loved it when I like artify like science. I used to doodle all the time on like science tests and just like draw like amorphosize chemicals and amorphosize biological things like fish or whatever. Like they were very encouraging. My teachers have at times, like one example, my 7th grade science teacher, she always like doesn't return my test and actually hangs it up on like the board with my drawings.
Oh, sweet. I love that.
Yeah, it's
comforting to know that somebody was supporting you anyways.
Yeah, it's always like usually like like the science teachers and the math teachers, they want a little bit of uniqueness and a little bit of like something different.
Right.
In the art field, it's like, I'm like, just playing into the system already. And like, I guess it was much harder to try to science-fy a English class, let's just say. It was much more easier to artify a math and science class.
I love that term, artify. That is the word of the day. I'm going to have to do a word of the day with that. That is a great word, artify.
I should know if that word's real or fake as a playwright.
As a dramaturg, yeah.
Yeah, I
That's what's great about theater is that you can make up your own words and it really doesn't matter.
exactly.
Actually, the English class might not approve of that. It sounds like.
Oh yeah, but English is it's a working
Same model
course. It's a working class. It's supposed to be open. I wish it like learns how to like be open to new words, especially in high school and stuff.
Yeah. I know, interesting. Well, that is the problem with arts education, but that is a whole nother conversation. But an interesting through line, I have to say, in a lot of my interviews, I find that they are oftentimes discouraged from pursuing the arts at a young age. So it's encouraging to me that you were actually encouraged, and yet you still went into science. So how did you come full circle after like going through a very intense, I imagine, arts or science degree, getting your Bachelor of Science?
Yeah, I also did a minor in theater, which is like
right.
it was my my filler classes. So like we need 120 credits, and I think the astrophysics degree had 90. Of course, you have to take your core things like sociology 101 or like a art-based class 101, just so that you have some humanity in you. Which I think, the STEM field definitely needs a lot. And I chose theater. I chose theater to fill all my extra necessary requirements of those credits. And it ended up filling into a minor in theater. But the particular thing that really made me revisit being a musical writer was, my sister ended up having that math teacher.
Oh, the same one.
Yeah, in high school. Yeah, she's 5 years old younger than me. Yeah, she had him, and apparently she told me every year he's been sharing that Mathland musical to the class.
Sweet.
And I was like, at the time I was senior in college, and I was at the cyclotron, and I was just like, oh wow, this is nostalgia and sentimental. Okay, well, I guess I'll just do this as a hobby again. I'll just write musicals again as a hobby while finishing this degree. And that's when I ended up personifying the subatomic particles that were there.
Yeah.
And wrote a very unique opera about subatomic particles going to college.
Oh, they're all going to. So that's tour, right? That's your tour,
yes.
Where you personified subatronic. Well, oh my God, what is it again? Say it again.
Subatomic
particles. Yeah, that one's hard for a non-science person to get their brain around. But your next musical, Ellipses, I feel like at least I digested it a little bit more. You did the same thing. I didn't want to use the word anthropomorphize because I feel like galaxies are kind of living entities already, but you reimagined galaxies as human characters, and you translated their scientific attributes to like personality traits and stages of development, which knowing enough about the galaxies and the cosmos, I thought that your translation was really fascinating, like the adolescent galaxy or the dog that is gravity. Like I could definitely see that energy of like gravity's not going away, that kind of constant. So tell us about Ellipses. And by the way, you have a new fan, Vicky. Hello, Vicky. Thanks for listening. She's going to use your word artify now. I'm going to use that word too. I love that word.
Oh, we got this on tape, and we know the origin. Okay, ellipses. The ideas do like morph over time. Like when I was in college, I just doodled and of course, thought galaxies were people. So a little bit of science and a little bit of how a galaxy develops. They start off prolate, basically like cucumber shaped, and eventually they become very well rounded. I just thought, oh, they're like people. They're trying to be well rounded like us over time. And of course, they have stars that are like cells to us. They have 8 hearts, which is a supermassive black hole to them. And it's always, yeah, we always have a negative connotation of black hole. But it's like, it's just something that's really heavy and full of memories. It's not its fault that it's sucking everything in.
Like, and also it's kind of mysterious. Like black holes are mysterious, and they kind of go on. Like we don't know. In theory, you can kind of go on forever through a black hole. Like I kind of love that metaphor for the heart. I think it works.
Yeah, and it's totally like made me think in a different way than all the other astronomers. Their mission is like, yeah, to understand where in like a more holistic way of like, yeah, where we come from and the origins of the universe. My thing is yeah, I think when we're born, we are initially also a Big Bang as well. We are also a universe in ourselves. And that's like kind of like maybe what made the astronomers think I'm crazy. And
not the quantum physicists, the physicists. I feel like the quantum physicists would probably.
Yes, they need to theorize every single thing. They need to like they literally have a concentration in philosophy at this point. Yeah. The connections that I saw between between galaxies and humanities, I saw it also temporality and eternity. I try to make the time frame of eternity seem in 2 hours, which is it's always fun for me as a musical writer. That's like, oh, I want to see how I can pace this. Mm-hmm. Hey audience, what you just saw is 18 billion years, well 13.8 billion years go by right there in 30 minutes. Right.
Well, it's helpful that you have a song called Time is Relative.
Yes.
Right. Is that the name of the song?
Yep. And that song is based on the theory where if you have twins and one of them goes to space near the speed of light for a year, that baby that goes in that spaceship it only ages a year, and the baby on Earth aged probably 60 years, for example. Right. And it's a message that's always difficult to state, but it's something that resonates with me when I'm writing about two characters that decided to ditch their little sibling.
Yeah, it fits.
Yeah. Like they're missing out on Milky Way growing up. Yeah, Milky Way's the baby sibling. And the two
I love that Milky Way is the baby, because in so many ways I feel like us as a species, even, you know, we are kind of the baby. At least in the universe that has been around for in the larger universe, even beyond our galaxy, as we're starting to learn thanks to science. You know what I mean? So you're spot on. You're just so spot on. I feel like with more than what people realize when they're watching the show, but it also is laying a foundation where I think if people come to it through science, it will make more sense because you've introduced it from an artistic point of view.
Yeah, the most important thing in the talkback was someone stated that it doesn't require the knowledge of science to get it. It's a family drama.
I also love the family metaphor as well.
Yeah, everyone knows family. So when you introduce like science through family, it's much more relatable for a fun word. And relative.
Yeah.
This musical especially came up last year because we're all isolated. What's at stake is family now. Like we just come to the realization of our mortality and how even though eternity and our lifetime is long, it's actually pretty short and a blink.
Yes. Oh my gosh, beautifully put. And it is a family drama at the end of the day. Yeah. What would you say your purpose in writing it? Like, what was your goal, and like, what were you hoping to get across in it? Did you have some kind of main focus?
Yeah. So Milky Way story, the ellipses are definition of ellipses. Basically, ellipses in geometry is ovals, and ellipses in grammar is omission. So the 3 dots, and what culminated is 3 ovals, right? And The three ovals mostly represent Milky Way being the youngest oval, let's say. SPT 0615JD, which is the furthest galaxy we can see by gravitational lensing.
That's a great character name.
Yes. Or
short, right?
Yeah, shorten it to JD. And that's the character that's going. Yeah, so Milky Way is going from a preteen to a teen. JD is going from a teenager to an adult. And singularity is the embodiment of adults transitioning to death. And these ellipses are, like overlaying itself in these liminal spaces. And the liminal spaces that I'm conveying is puberty and the transition into adulthood. And that's usually what I'm trying to come across with this story, is the coming of age theme. That's like one of the many like universal themes that I put in this, that I shoved into this 2-hour musical. It of course includes family and how family is, time is relative. Time is family. You don't have much time with your family. Just basically the connections between family and relativity, temporality and eternity, and humanities and galaxies. That's what usually I come across with ellipses.
I see. And the pandemic was indeed kind of a perfect time for that story to be told. And what's so interesting to me is, again, because I approach things from more of a human development side, in my book on artist development specifically. And you obviously are not, that's not an area that you have studied. And yet I feel like you nailed it because you were using the scientific model, which what I've always been drawn to in science, even though I figured it out late in life, unfortunately. So I don't always have the language for it, or the term.
Late in life. No, there's no late.
Word. There's time is relative. So you're right. It is only now. But the thing that I'm drawn to science is because of the metaphors in our own biological development and our own psychological development, and that's why I like quantum physics too, because there are these amazing parallels of our universe and in our reality. And a lot of the work that I do working with artists and helping them try to find sustainability in their careers is to try to understand that relativity piece, and to try to really balance out. I mean, nature has mastered sustainability. You know what I mean? And even like all your characters, like one kind of, they don't really die. They just evolve, and if we can kind of master that as artists, that's how we can keep the creative flame going. And that is also how we can combat a culture that that discourages us from pursuing the arts. So anyway, I have to get my little plug in there for what I do. But there is a beautiful, and also now it's kind of a good time to mention my weekly conversation, Finding Balance, that you have been attending. And what's so great to having David in the audience for this event is that you can always bring up the parallels in physics, or in science, and especially astronomy, and it's really helpful because you have all those the words that I don't always have to explain it all. So if you're out there and you haven't come to the event yet, please come, because David's going to be my new co-host, because because that side is so important to artist development, the science side. So since we're kind of there, tell us what it was about. Now we know why and kind of how you were drawn to theater and the art side of it. So what is it about science, astronomy, and physics specifically? What is it that you love about that side?
Oh yeah, I always so the common things about my work is I'm very obsessed with geometry and structure. Okay. Of course, we always contemplate the cosmology of where we come from. What's the origin of the universe? Coming from a more philosophical side, actually. It's just me challenging the notion that we're a speck of dust. It's something that I hear a lot from when I was younger, watching Nova and the universe and PBS shows with that where, oh look, expand out, we're actually a speck of dust. I came in, yes, being a disruptor to even astronomy, that we're a universe in ourselves. Like, and there are smaller things that are on us, like we're planets or we're galaxies, and seeing what is stars to us, but is actually a post-it note to me, like you and I, like, right?
Yes.
And that's, yeah, that I came in, yeah, kind of want to be a disruptor there too, like that astronomy is supposed to make us feel important, and that's what I want people to come out of when they see that we're a dot on a dot, but there are billions and trillions of dots on us too. For an easier answer, it's because of space camp. Like,
You loved space camp.
yeah, like in Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah, the gravitron. That was fun. Shooting model rockets is always fun. Fun fact is, I still like regret to this day that mine accidentally tipped over and hit like one of the staff members.
Your
When
model rocket?
and I still feel bad to this day that that's why I didn't go into aeronautical engineering. Let's say.
Well, thank God for the arts. Actually, we're very happy to have you. But yeah, your understanding of it is really helpful. And actually, I've been watching the Magical Egypt series. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they really they trace back these ideas of cosmology back to the ancient Egyptians. And have you heard of the sacred sciences?
No, I do. I'm familiar with the Egyptians, of how like they thought the what was it, Draco? What was it? Draco? Yeah, I think Draco constellation meant that the gods were coming, and
Yeah.
but sacred science.
There's the sacred sciences, which is geometry, mathematics, and oh, of course, now I'm forgetting all the others because I'm not a science person, but they're all the things that astronomy, they're the first time in history where we can see these things, like they're temples that are built according to sacred geometry, and a lot of these ideas. And so it's interesting to trace it back. But that's another topic. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, although I have a feeling we might go down that rabbit hole in one of our conversations. Weekly conversations, Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can see David and I there. And this is the kind of stuff we love to talk about, the parallels of basically human development and science, but we always have an artistic angle to it because we're both artists. So I want to ask you before we wrap up, we've talked about you being a disruptor. You're basically doing things another way. And I know you know what I mean by that because you are at the weekly conversations. And I want to hear, how would you say you're doing things another way?
Yeah, the scientific method, of course. I flesh that out in my dramaturgy. My another way is what I enjoy about theater is, the collaborative space. It has helped me harness this balance of competition and collaboration. It's something that was a little hard in science, because oftentimes in science, if we found out that someone if NASA was hiring, let's say, a social media intern, I'm not gonna try to put it on the forum, but someone nice will put that on the forum, and then everyone will sign up, and now it's gonna be hard for me to apply for it. For example, it was another way for me. I was like, I have this lane now as a science dramaturg. I have this lane as a musical theater science communicator. There's hardly musicals about science. Like being a science dramaturg, it's like a research assistant to a researcher. But I was like, I totally don't know everything about science. My science mostly pertains to astronomy and physics. And that's the most I'm comfortable usually with. And being a science dramaturg is certainly like where I can come in and help playwrights who don't have science backgrounds, and they would love someone who is patient and can read through the books and learn, has a passion for learning, is okay with being wrong, and then being open that I am wrong, and basically, helping a playwrights, if they ask a question, whether it's, hey, can you make my story more structured like a cell with the endoplasm and other plasms that I can't remember, or hey, can you make this more accessible to a commercial audience? And then I'll tell them, okay, the audience is not dumb, but you might do things like personify these these you might need a dance number where you go away from the scientist and the mentee and actually put these two cells on the stage and have them perform these certain rituals, reproduction or whatever. And um, that's certainly my way of being a helpful member of the theater community. And it's something that was very hard in the science community. Most of them love theater. Most of them go to theater and watch it. Eventually, when they retire, they often, decide to go into storytelling because they do want to have some legacy. A lot of times, they want to show that they actually love the arts, and so that from there, I also help them. As a storyteller, bring their usually hard scientific jargon into the theater industry.
Yeah, I mean that this idea of personifying some of these ideas, I feel like that's your signature in many ways, because that's not something I've seen very often. I'm shocked to hear, and I asked you because I was like, you say you're a science dramaturg, but how many shows are actually like writing with these topics? Because it's not something I see very much, and yet they're out there and they're finding you. And I think it's a perfect example of somebody who has created their own lane. You know, like you said, that is another way. It's like when you really drop into what you're passionate about and align with it, the way, if you will, really does kind of open up to you. And I think you're a perfect example of that. And just a couple other things you do that I think is really interesting and is part of your another way. I was really impressed with all the visuals and animations and just the way that your reading was presented. Well, I know it was virtual, so you had, and during the pandemic, we saw a lot of talking heads. But for your reading, we saw these visual representation, this like animation of the actors. And we also saw the actors, which I appreciated. You went between the two, because I think if it had been all animated, it might have been a little bit more to digest. But because we had both, it was just super cool and unique. And you did all that work yourself, right?
Yep. I planted that I drew a lot. I had art pieces that were exhibited at festivals when I was younger. Certainly, like that also helped me love astronomy in that the planets had this impressionistic look to them. Again, I have patience. The astronomy also helped me with patience. Let's just say a lot of research a lot of times is like I gotta stare at a certain noisy looking pixelated part in the space for 10 months to see if it's a star or a galaxy, and sometimes it's nothing. So that's something that astronomy certainly like taught me, is patience and kind of just being okay with messing up a year-long project.
I love that. Again, something a lot of artists and in the theater too can learn, because so many artists are very quick and rush, maybe even the development stage. I mean, I won't name names, but I can certainly think of Broadway shows that rushed to get to Broadway before maybe they were ready, So another great metaphor for artists. So, David, thank you so much for joining us to tell us more about what you do, because I think it's very enlightening and very helpful for people to see what you do. So before we go, though, I know you've got so much going on right now. Do you want to kind of plug all the things that you're doing? You got the class.
Just plug Finding Balance. Okay, so go. Yeah, I am so honored to be your co-host. I remember attending your events in like 2020 when like we met, and I was delighted for it to be scheduled again in April. The first one was about NFTs. And
NFTs.
I had very little idea of what NFTs were before. But the event that really sat with me is authenticity and artistic license. And I usually tie authenticity to passion. And passion is very amorphous, to be honest. I like sometimes don't know what that word even means. Well, I can say like I'm not passionate about spending the next however many years understanding how non-fungible tokens work, but I am passionate about learning, and that is all that matters in our conversations each Sunday. And so Yeah, I am delighted to continue learning under you and under fellow guests, and at the same time while also driving home that passion of learning to any new viewers. So please come. Yeah.
Yes, and that is what it's about. It is a conversation. I don't think people realize how it's not one per. I mean, I sometimes will do a lot of the talking, but it's really designed to let everybody have their say. So yeah, please, thank you so much. It's a perfect plug for it. But you're also teaching
Musical writing, yes.
right.
Yeah. That's my first master class I'll be teaching. I'll teach it next month with Harlem neighborhood writers.
Yay, congratulations on that. And is there someplace that people can follow you?
You can follow me at Working Title, so title as in Title Force. You can find me pretty much at any theater gathering at this point that's online.
And at the weekly meetings a lot of times.
Yes, the theater resources, unlimited gatherings every Friday. And yeah, shoot me a chat if you have a science play that you would love for me to read. I'll give you a one-page note and we can go from there.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, David. This has been wonderful. And as always, I will end it with just a reminder to the audience that there's always another way. And so I'm encouraging you to find your own way, to embrace it, just like David has done. And we will see you next time. Thanks again.